Women's health tech founders are faced with an uncertain landscape of laws and regulations, especially since the recent overturning of Roe versus Wade here in the US. Our guest is an experienced healthcare and FemTech attorney on a mission to spread awareness of FemTech while supporting new founders and entrepreneurs to bring their health innovations to life. Oh, we're going to have a delicious conversation today. Stay tuned for the Startup Life live show. Let's glow. Hello and welcome everyone to the Startup Life live show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, oh my gosh, I am in awe and wonder of everything that you are doing. I'm cheering you on because my goodness, I have a really good idea what you're walking through every single day. And I know you're all sleeping like babies at night, right? Waking up every 2 hours crying. It's not always that bad, but it's a wonderful journey. It's a roller coaster ride. And that's why I am so grateful that you stopped whatever you were doing to tune in and up your founder game. You're going to get some great insights and advice and solutions that you may never have thought of by tuning into the show. And you know that as you do better, your business will do better. And if you're tuning in, watching today from YouTube or any of the videos, I would be so grateful for you to click on that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That really helps me reach more folks out there. And if you haven't done so already, come on over and join the Startup Life Live meetup group. This is where you will receive an in-depth announcement for each guest. I'm here live on Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 noon, and there's going to be a founder that you're going to want to learn from and whose conversation you will really enjoy. So let me share a few Andelicious announcements with you because, again, you got to be up in your game, right, as founders. And so first off, of course, I always send everyone to Arlen's Academy because everything you need to know about launching a successful business is all in one place on this website. And you know how generous Arlen is, right? She's always adding wind to folks' sales and opening doors and helping them everywhere she goes. I also want to let you know about this really cool event coming up. It's the Women's Venture Summit. And this is an opportunity to create a bridge between female founders and female funders. And the goals of the conference are to boost female founders' access to capital and to grow the number of female investors who invest in female-led startups. We love that. So you could, write your first check, meet your future co-founder, connect with other fearless mission-driven women right here. Also, here in Boston, we have a phenomenal group called the Capital Network, and they are always holding incredible opportunities for you to grow and own your story and create and build compelling pitch decks or understand your valuation or understand cap tables, everything you need to know. So this is a particular event coming up, but hop on over to the Capital Network. And if you use Andelicious, Andelicious at checkout, you'll receive 50% off any of their programs. They are a terrific group. So, and then if you want to grab some of the documents I'm always sharing or videos that I'm always sharing to help you up your game, hop on over to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. As I'm always saying, this charming personality doesn't happen on its own. Caffeine from coffee really helps me. And you'll also get the benefit of grabbing some of the documents that I'm always talking about here. So hop on over and grab me and buy me a cup of coffee to keep this Andelicious vibe going. And remember, founders, there's nothing better than talking to your peers, okay? Nobody knows what you're going through best than other founders. So keep those going on. And while we're chatting here during the show or anytime, please amplify your business. Let me know your business name, URL, one-liner, so we can cheer you on live here in the show or anywhere that you're glowing and I'm glowing on social media. I'd love to add wind to your sails and learn more about what you're doing. Okay, time to introduce our amazing guest that's joining us today, the one and only Bethany Corbin. She's an experienced healthcare and FemTech attorney who believes the international FemTech community has the collective power to transform the standard of care for women's health. And Bethany's goal is to spread awareness of FemTech, disseminate meaningful insights that allow new founders and entrepreneurs to bring their health innovations to life, and mentor the next generation of FemTech leaders. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to bring her into the room. Bethany!
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you, Ande.
Oh my gosh, where are you tuning in from today?
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina.
We love it. North Carolina, NC in the house. That's so good. Hey, folks, I have to read something because Bethany is an attorney. So I am going to provide, it's in writing on the show notes, but I've got to provide this verbal disclaimer, which we always do when we have experts that are from the legal field or the finance field. And that is, this recorded conversation is for informational purposes only and is not legal advice. Transmission of the conversation is not intended to create, and viewing and or listening does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. Viewers and listeners are advised to seek professional help if they are concerned about a specific legal issue.
Perfectly done, Ande.
Got to take care and protect the lawyers too, right?
Exactly. We're nobody's favorite person, but we need some love.
Absolutely. You do such a good job. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. So here's Mia Voss. Hi, Mia. She's in the front row, but not only from YouTube, she's a multifaceted, multi-platform goddess. She's also tuning in from Facebook. I love that. And everybody knows when Mia swings by, I got to pop it up. Mia is the phenomenal host of the Shit We Don't Talk About podcast. And folks, if you really want to have a good time and really get to know the topics that are so important that we need to be talking about, please visit shitwedon'ttalkaboutpodcast.com. You will love yourself some Mia because she goes there, but she does it in such a delicious way. So thank you, Mia, for coming by. And Brent, tuning in from Canada. Diverse and loyal fan. Everybody knows Brent, and he can't wait to celebrate women's empowerment in the founder journey. Yay, Brent, thank you. And Ruth, our wonderful community manager, coming in from Nairobi, Kenya. She's like, yee! She's welcoming Mia Voss. Happy to see you here in the front row and not on the streets of New York. Mia just came off a great trip, everybody, from New York. It's so great. And my fan to shout you out anytime, Ms. Voss. Okay, so Bethany, on to you, because your background is so fascinating, but I always like to know what compels somebody, what lights somebody up about what they're doing. So talk a little bit about what lit you up about law and compelled you to dive deep into this specialty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like so many founders out there, right, a lot of us are driven by personal experiences that we have. And my journey into law was very similar. It actually started in college where I would, like many people, thought that I wanted to go and be a doctor and loaded up on science classes and realized very early in the semester that I was not good at biology. I knew nothing about chemistry, and I was the worst lab partner in the history of lab partners who could not make anything mix. And following that experience, it really forced me to consider where my skills lied compared to my passions. And so I was always passionate about healthcare, but clearly would not have made a great doctor. And so as a result, I ended up getting interested in law because I had a real passion for research and writing and really digging into topics and going places, Ande, as you mentioned, right, that people don't necessarily go real deep. And so I went to law school. Ended up not working in healthcare originally out of law school, worked in financial services law, which I absolutely hated, right? I'm sure a lot of people don't know exactly what they want to do out of college or law school. I found out very quickly what I did not want to do. And so really kind of had to pivot again and think through, where did I want to specialize in law? Because clearly it was not foreclosing on mortgages. And as a result, I started really digging deep. realized again that I was still passionate about healthcare and maybe there was a way to merge those two interests. Went and got a healthcare LLM, which is basically a master's degree on top of a JD. And after that, I went and I worked in healthcare law in big law, Washington, D.C. And it really helped me get the solid foundation of the basics for healthcare law. And it was, a lot of kind of insurance, PBM managed care work, which was really interesting. And then I actually had a personal experience with a women's health issue that kind of pivoted my entire direction. When I had that, I had just finished working as a law professor at Wake Forest. And at that point in time, I had come across this term FemTech. And it was totally unrelated. I was doing some unrelated scholarship and research, came across the term FemTech and was really intrigued by it, especially given my women's health history. And so I started to dig a little bit deeper into it, and I realized that nobody in the legal field was talking about it. And so after that, I decided that I wanted to leave academia, come back into the practice of law, and really focus on femtech and women's health issues.
Oh my gosh, so much deliciousness in like 3 minutes, everybody. I hope that folks watching this, beautiful recap. I'm so grateful. So, Bethany, one thing that's consistent about you and is a great example for everyone, pull on threads. Don't be afraid to dive deep into something because you get informed of what you clearly do not want to do. And so that's great advice for any founder with your business. Pull on a thread. Don't worry about making the mistake. Just go, ooh, that's never going to work, is it? I thought it might, but it didn't. That is so great. And I also love that you worked in DC. I mean, it's one thing to get some healthcare legal under your tiara, but then to work where policy is made. That had to have been really, really powerful. Oh my gosh. Well, the crowd is, as Mia says, I love this journey of discovery already. Follow that curiosity and then bounce when it's not what lights you up 100%. So happy to get that for a comment. So Bethany, you and I have this wonderful thing in common. And folks, Bethany clearly fell into, well, I wanted to become a doctor, but not really law. And then, wow, not real estate law or financial law. I want to go into the healthcare. And I love that you found a niche, but you went deeper into a personal understanding of why women's health tech and women's healthcare is so important. And you and I actually have this in common. So share with folks a little bit about how you personally, if you don't mind, came to have a deeper understanding of what women face when they're looking at healthcare.
Yeah, so I can say, right, as somebody who at the time, right, was in their late 20s, healthcare issues were not really something that was high on my radar. I went to my annual physicals and, didn't really have any health considerations or concerns. And so it had never crossed my mind. And then, right, we had the COVID pandemic hit. And as a result, I had, a regularly scheduled annual in January and really almost decided not to go because I thought, well, my doctor can renew my medications. I can do a virtual telehealth visit, right? We've seen telehealth really booming since the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I can tell you, I had actually written a couple of emails to my doctor saying, let's cancel my physical, right? Nothing's going on. I'm great. I feel great and wonderful. Let's skip it. And I don't know what actually propelled me to not send the email and to actually show up for my annual physical, but I got up early. I went in for my 7:40 a.m. annual physical. Doctor and I were chatting. It was towards the end of the physical. I'm thinking, great, right? I talked my way out of my blood draw. I don't want to see my cholesterol or my glucose levels. And so I was excited, right? Nothing was going on. And at the very end of the exam, right, she's just pushing on the pelvis area and says to me, "Are you pregnant?" And I'm sitting there going, no, like I am kind of the definition of a career woman right now, right? I do not have relationships that I'm not interested in getting a child right now. Right. And so I just kind of quickly brushed it off. I was like, no, of course not. But, I had kind of been feeling a little bit, not even pain, right, but kind of pressure when I would be working out and laying on the ground and just doing some ab work. And so I thought, maybe I had a hernia. And so I talked to her, I said, yeah, but that's kind of the spot where I might have a hernia. And she looks at me and she goes and she gets out the measuring tape, which is not what you ever want to see happen at your annual physical. And she starts measuring around on my stomach. And you can kind of see my face drop as I'm recognizing that, okay, maybe there's something going on. And she basically tells me that I have a large pelvic mass. And I had no symptoms whatsoever other than just a little, some bloating, a little bit of weight gain, which I thought was related to eating habits. And she schedules me for an emergency OBGYN visit. I have to get emergency ultrasounds because apparently I am the equivalent of 6 months pregnant and have no idea, no symptoms, nothing.
Oh my gosh, that's so scary. And meanwhile,
It
they're
was
like, emergency. You're like, wait, I just want to go back to work. I
right.
haven't got time for this.
Right, exactly. And I was, late 20s. This was not on my horizon. I ended up being very lucky in that I got providers who actually took health concerns seriously and, recognized that this was important. Were able to get me scheduled kind of same day for an emergency OBGYN visit and ultrasound, and come to find out that I had massive fibroids. And I had never heard the term fibroid before, even though it's a condition that affects the majority of women. Nobody had ever talked to me about it. Nobody was ever checking me for it. I mean, I had annual physicals up until then. Why did nobody find a grapefruit-sized mass in my abdomen before? It was very shocking, and really forced me to kind of dive into what we know about women's health and why women are so often neglected for their health issues. And it was so interesting. It ended up being a benign fibroid. I ended up having 6 of them, which was crazy. And what ended up happening is, as I would tell people, and this was very interesting, I would tell people I had a fibroid, and they would say, "Oh, I know somebody who's had that, right? I know that's not a big deal. It's a fibroid. You don't need to be concerned about that." I would tell people differently, "I've got a benign tumor," and they would react completely differently. It would be almost like, "Oh my gosh, that's really scary. What's going to happen? What's your treatment plan? How are you going to handle this?" And it was very interesting because the way that you frame it, fibroids are very much seen as kind of a female health issue that is something that we can just kind of brush off because it's affecting a majority of the population of women. And it's very interesting. I started researching the treatments and basically found that there hadn't been a ton of innovative treatments in the area of fibroids, despite its prevalence over the years.
Yeah.
So my options really were very limited to either taking a pill to try to shrink the fibroid size before having surgery, which had a lot of negative side effects, and a lot of people can't tolerate that medication, right? And then going in and having surgery. Which is called a myomectomy for those who have had it or have experienced fibroids, or having a uterine artery embolization, which has been described as basically being a heart attack for your uterus because you're cutting off the blood supply to the fibroids. And so those are my options. And it was crazy. Hysterectomy is also technically an option, but I was faced with some great providers who said that they would not try that option first to preserve fertility. And because of that, I ended up undergoing a 7-hour myomectomy at the Mayo Clinic to remove the fibroids. It was done laparoscopically, but I can tell you the recovery time from that was a minimum of 6 weeks. And it was very painful, right? And it changes your fertility journey, going forward,
Completely.
Kids, the way you can have kids. And so for people who tell me, oh, it's just a fibroid, it just really reinforces to me how often women's health is neglected and downplayed.
I have 2 things to say about that. And I'm with Mia here. The diagnosis brush off. Folks, we had a beautiful baby girl, Marcy, on her way inside me, 20 weeks, when a fibroid the size of 2 grapefruit pushed her out, live delivery. She did not make it. Horrific experience. I too had to go and have a myomectomy. This was in 92. So it was a long surgery and recovery was not easy. And, I wanted to go on and have more pregnancy. So now your uterus is compromised. And again, nobody's talking about it. And it reminds me of someone who recently got diagnosed with endometriosis after an extraordinary period of pain, Bethany. And I've been hearing these stories from women since the 80s, going on years in pain with nobody diagnosing. And she had a woman doctor. So it's not a gender issue, okay? It is a medical issue. And I love that you had this personal experience. I mean, I'm sorry you had the personal experience. Really, I am. But it brought you even deeper into a passion for how do we as women collectively have better health care, right? And opening up the doors, folks. Oh my gosh, I have to send you women watching. There's this funny little thing because there was a thing on Twitter where a guy goes, "Can you go to the bathroom as a woman when you have a tampon in?" Well, all the women eye rolled and howled. Okay. And then one doctor put up her happy little female area photo. It was like, come on, we all know about what you guys have going on. Trust me, you need to have the same thing. So I really love, so you switched over to this, how did this inform how you were practicing law is the question I wanted to ask.
Yeah, yeah, after going through that, it really made me want to have a greater impact on society and on women's health, right? Couldn't do it as a doctor. So maybe if I was able to use my legal knowledge to help out the startup community, which is focused on women's health, maybe then I could play a greater role in helping to bring those innovative ideas and designs to the market faster and push out more innovative solutions for women so that nobody in the future has to undergo what we've gone through. It's a story that I hear from a lot of founders is really kind of what embarks them on their journey is their own personal experiences that they don't want anyone else to have to live through. So following that experience, it really solidified for me my interest in FemTech, my desire to be involved in women's health. And then I just had to find a vehicle through which I could practice that type of law, which is how I ended up at Nixon Gwilt Law, which is actually the only healthcare innovation law firm in the United States. That's all we focus on is healthcare innovation.
No kidding. Now, I'm sorry, I'm taken aback. I live in a very startup centric life bioscience. You've got it, right? You're the first, say that again about Nixon, because this is really important.
Yeah, we're the only law firm in the US that focuses exclusively on healthcare innovation. So while we could, for instance, do more of the traditional healthcare work like mergers and acquisitions, right, insurance type work, our focus and our passion is on helping innovators get up and running, get their ideas out to the world. So we focus really on startup law within the healthcare community. And we have a deep knowledge of expertise and just wonderful experts on the topic on our team. And so we're really kind of at that cutting edge, helping our clients innovate in a lot of the regulatory gray areas. One of the things that we often hear from clients is if they've worked with attorneys before, oh my gosh, my attorney is my roadblock, right? They're telling me no, I can't do this. I can't do my business this way. I can't get this off the ground. And what we really strive to do is the exact opposite, where maybe that model doesn't work, but we're going to tell you how you might be able to achieve that same result. And our goal is always to get you to yes, because we're really aligned with our innovators' visions.
Oh, first of all, there's so many reasons I love what you just said. First of all, I love that this practice is so clear about how it's serving the innovators. Okay. But also as a host, the way you captured that, founders, that was a brilliant example of being able to really put it out there about, your work in the world. I love that. And so, you're working with companies who not only are doing, everybody knows about Internet of Things, but you're doing Internet of Medical Things. You're seeing innovators who are coming in, right? And so talk about this, how do you help the founders navigate the murky waters? And folks, I'm all about that dream team. Number one person on your dream team is your attorney. Yeah. After that, of course, your accountant, your insurance broker, everybody who's going to protect you, okay, at your business. But talk about how you get the founders on board. First of all, how do they hear from you? How do you reach them as a practice? And then we'll talk about how you help them navigate the murky waters.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a huge presence by word of mouth. We have a lot of founders and innovators that we've helped. And so I would say kind of one of our greatest referral sources is the fact that people have enjoyed working with us and recommend us to other founders that they know. Additionally, we are all over social media, especially LinkedIn. We post a lot of thought leadership on that platform and from a variety of different perspectives, right? So maybe you're not a FemTech company, but you're a company that's starting a virtual telehealth business, or you're a company that wants to bring a product into the market that requires FDA approval. We have expertise in kind of that entire realm, and we post a lot of thought leadership on LinkedIn, on social media platforms, on news outlets. We have a lot of people who have been featured in top news outlets, Forbes, Fortune, Cosmopolitan, Bustle, Teen Vogue even. And so we're very much recognized as leaders in this field, which is fantastic. And it also allows us to really make sure that we're serving the right types of clients. So typically the way that we operate, for instance, we'll do a very short, potential new client call that's free to try to make sure that we understand your vision, where you're going, and that you can learn a little bit more about us and how we operate. And then typically once we decide that we're a good fit, right, we'll proceed to a longer kickoff call, which is really an hour-long discussion for what your business model is. What are your goals? Where are you going in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 5 years? And one of our core tenets is that we partner with our clients. So we're not just this kind of outside lawyer that you call every now and then to answer a couple of questions. That's not the way that we prefer to work. We actually prefer to be deeply integrated into your business. That means we want to demo your products. We want to know what your revenue structures are going to be, how you're strategizing that, what your leadership team is thinking. And so we form those kind of deep partnerships with clients that allow us to be able to pivot very quickly if your business model changes. Because everyone in the startup world knows, right? Sometimes you've got to move fast and sometimes you've got to pivot and go in an entirely different direction.
Absolutely. And, the outside forces can make that happen. We'll talk more about that with regulations. But Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today. Jennifer has a great question. Curious to know what your thoughts are about having medical malpractice insurance and medical credentialing done when doing pilots or validating care models.
Oh. Yeah, it's a great question, right? And one in which we're not providing legal advice on this
as I said with my disclaimer.
Right. But we would always recommend, right, being in compliance with appropriate laws, credentialing requirements, and insurance requirements while you're gearing up to do pilot programs, and making sure that you've got, even if it's a pilot program, right, the necessary contracts, documentations in place, right? If you need confidentiality agreements, all of that in place and structured for pilot agreements, just to make sure that you're adequately protected. And so that, a lot of times, sometimes it will be like a case by case determination depending on the type of model and what you're trying to validate. But at the same time, it's something that we do want to make sure, even in the pilot stages, that you are adequately covered and prepared and protected.
Oh my gosh. Again, folks, Dream Team. Jackie, I loved that question. Do you have your own business? Are you thinking of something? If you do have your own business, be sure to share your business name, one-liner, and URL in the comments. And Bethany and I will cheer you on. And so I had another question. What about for startups? So of course, the big law firms here in Boston, they love to get those startup founders early on, right? And they do a little incentive sometimes, especially, for patents and things like that. They may offer a little line of credit, a little financial support. Is that something that Nixon does, being that they're the only one in the category? Or I was just curious.
Yeah, so it's not something that we typically do. We want to work with founders who are kind of at the right stage where they need legal support because of the way that we partner with our clients. And so we will not hesitate to tell someone, right, this is great, you're too early for us, right? It might benefit you to work more with XYZ company, right? Consider these other types of resources and come back to us when you're ready at the next stage. So we typically do not do those types of fundraising initiatives, right, or incentives. But what we do, right, is make sure that we understand your product, your company, in a way that kind of big law firms and other companies don't necessarily understand or have the ability to partner with you. The other thing that makes us really unique, I would say, is that we actually do not like the billable hour. We do not think that it aligns incentives between founders and their attorneys, because it really makes you afraid to go and pick up the phone and call your attorney, because you're sitting there thinking, great, well, that was 0.3 hours at $750 and they didn't answer my question, and now they have to go back and research it. And so we operate instead on a model that allows for fixed fee engagements and retainer agreements. And that way you'll know your cost up front, and we'll be transparent with you, and you have access to the entire team and to our entire knowledge base. And we think that works better for startup founders.
Absolutely, it works better. I think I know who this is. LinkedIn isn't showing, but it's probably Gerald. So, hey, Gerald, this is a great question. We can't get it all into this one comment here. And I understand, so folks, Gerald has a company called Flowell. Great name for what they treat. It has invented a treatment for the 1 billion incontinent women in the world. It's so innovative that it must go through the long de novo 510K FDA regulatory process. And he's right. That is a long process, folks. And of course, raising money, he's talking about, it's kind of hard. And after FDA clearance, they won't really need those funds. So how would you, and I'm sorry, I can't read your question. So if you could just pop the actual question in there, and again, if it's legal advice, we can't. But do you help founders with maybe increasing their social capital, introductions to folks in the capitalization world? Is that, talk a little bit about that, I guess. Maybe that'll help the Flowell founder there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of connections, just in terms of, people that we know, right? People that we're connected with, people we interact with regularly. And so if we believe that there is a good fit, right, between your company and an investor that we know, an accelerator program that we're involved with, other kind of fundraising opportunities that come across our paths, we will definitely reach out to you and recommend you for those opportunities and help you to kind of explore those. We also help a lot of our startup companies kind of understand and develop their own business model and revenue models as well. So things, right, for instance, if you're
God, excuse me. That's amazing.
It's great. Yeah. Just because we have an in-depth knowledge of this field. So for example, right, if you're a telehealth company and you want to do remote patient monitoring, but you need help understanding what are those CPT codes? Like, what does this mean that I have to bill 30 minutes 6 times a week, right? Or, 16 days a month? What are all those standards? Which codes can I use? Which ones can't I? Which ones can help build revenue for my model? We have a fantastic virtual care management team that is just phenomenal at knowing and understanding those regulations kind of right off the top of their heads and can answer a lot of those types of revenue questions.
Wow. And do you have a patent attorney on board for, because some of these are devices that have to be at, utility design using patents? Yes.
Yeah, so we have a high level expertise of patent law and intellectual property law on our team. And in addition, right, if there's questions that a company comes and asks us that, let's say, that we just don't feel comfortable answering, right, because we want to make sure that you get the best legal knowledge that you can. And so we're not going to say, right, we're experts in every single area of the law. We have other law firms that we work very closely with and partners. So we've got partners for FDA, partners for intellectual property, partners in corporate law for those more complex questions that we can't answer.
Yeah.
And what we'll do in those situations is we'll be almost your quarterback, right? So we will kind of facilitate the relationship with those other firms. And so you're not trying to manage 2 law firms, right, and different questions and who has what. We do all that for you and facilitate a seamless communication chain. And all you have to do, right, is engage with us, and we can handle that.
Oh my gosh, that is so great. Okay, so Flowell founder, he's asking, how would you advise a startup with a potentially major impact on women to find funding? Jerry Shapiro at flowell.com. Yeah, that is such a good question. It's something that so many founders struggle with all the time. And I'm going to, and sometimes, Gerald, they sometimes, I mean, I know a group, excuse me for stuttering over this. I know a group, 360 Ventures, they do health for women, but female founders only. So it's hard to weed through everything. But Jerry, are you familiar with Scroobius? Because I think Scroobius is a great way to connect with other founders. Other founders are the best way to find out who's out there, who are they talking to, what investors are they talking to, and Scroobius prepares you for funding. That you do they help create a video pitch, and they do introduce investors. Investors can come along and see who is in the funnel there at Scroobius, and their products are so affordable, everyone. I mean, literally $20 a month for their minimum, $480 for the year. And you use the Ande 15 for the discount. Links are in the show notes, folks. It really can help you with your pitch. So, and help connect you. Okay. So, and then Jackie, thank you. I am the founder CEO of Wellmiss. We are the first digital health company for women where we address unhealed trauma in the body through holistic and integrative virtual care teams. Wow, that is so exciting. Okay, everybody, go check out Wellmiss and see what's going on there. Thank you, Jennifer Jackie Johnson, for sharing that with us. And yes, Bethany, yay, you glove goddess. Same with you, Jerry. Yay, with your businesses. That's so important. Well, you have taken us through the wonderful opportunity to work with you, how you help startups. I love that you've niched down. I love how you do your customer acquisition because law firms have to do the same thing every founder does, which is bring folks on board, right? And bring aligned clients on board. So thank you for sharing all of that information. Let's take a moment, here in the US, Roe versus Wade, a very important part of our women's health, folks, has been overturned. And what we're seeing in many states in the US, there's this just blanket ban that's preventing doctors and nurses to help women, specifically around anything to do with the uterus, the fallopian tubes, ovaries, everything. So, for example, if I may just tell a quick story, everyone, a high powered attorney in the city of Nashville has a beloved who had a ectopic pregnancy, and it started to bleed. That's internal bleeding. And this woman knew all the chiefs of hospitals everywhere. She was so connected. I don't know if it was a daughter, a niece, almost died because for 10 hours, nobody would deal with her situation. And so this is what we're up against here in the US, but this is also with the apps. There's so many wonderful apps out there to track your menstrual cycle, to track when you ovulate, to track, everything. Can we talk a little bit about this, Bethany, that's, comfortable for you as an attorney, around how those who have come up with apps for tracking should be careful? Do you have any insights that you could share?
I do, yeah. So in addition to being deeply invested in FemTech, I am also a privacy and security expert at the firm. And so I look at apps from the privacy and security perspective, along with kind of the greater good perspective. And so a couple of things that I would recommend with respect to apps in the FemTech context right now. The first thing is understand that a lot of women are very hesitant right now to input their data into applications that are tracking reproductive health data or sensitive health data, because there's this fear with the Dobbs decision that came out and overturned Roe versus Wade, that law enforcement officers and prosecutors are going to get a hold of that data and use it to prosecute women who have had an abortion. So that's kind of the fear that's been driving this. And it's also why you've probably seen a lot of news articles say, geez, should I delete my period tracking app? Should I delete my FemTech apps? And for that reason, right, FemTech is kind of in this unique and unprecedented situation in which it's got to be much more cognizant of how it's using and disclosing data, because women are now looking at that whenever they're choosing products to use. So we're at a situation where enhanced privacy and security measures are becoming value adds and differentiators on the market, and they can give you a competitive advantage. So if you're designing an app, right, that's going to collect any type of sensitive or reproductive health data, I would strongly recommend incorporating privacy and security by design principles. That really, right, what those really mean is that you're building your product with privacy and security at the forefront. And that's kind of driving each of the decisions that you're making for your app and your product, what data you're collecting, how you're going to disclose it downstream. The other thing that I would recommend for app developers, right, is your privacy policy. So privacy policies are required in the US. It's a Federal Trade Commission that is typically making sure that you're not going out and being unfair or deceptive in how you're telling consumers that you're going to be using their data. And so you need a privacy policy that accurately explains how you're using data, how you're collecting it, who you're disclosing it to, how long you're retaining it. What I have seen to be very common among some startup founders is this tendency to go and copy and paste a privacy policy from a competitor or a similar product that's out there, because you think that you're designed similarly to something that's already out there. And so you think, yeah, right, my privacy policy can be the same as that. Huge mistake, right? Because the FTC is really starting to crack down on privacy policies. We saw that with the Flow settlement in 2021. And so your privacy policy has to be customized for your app. It has to be accurate, and to the dismay of many, many founders, it has to be continuously updated as your product changes. So that's something you should also kind of keep front and center when you're building, is making sure that you're accurately describing to your customers how you're using their data.
Oh my gosh, everyone, I'm having an Andelicious moment. Oh, Bethany, you're making my heart sing with joy with that advice. Come on, that is founders. I know. I'm old, okay? So I've been around since we all did copy and paste in the 90s for our websites, but no, you cannot do that. You have to fork out the dough. You have to invest in your business and get the right legal language for your app, especially around privacy and security. Thank you, Bethany. Just going to just send everybody to this clip. Yeah, everybody over here to this conversation. You're nailing it,
Yeah, and the
100%.
other thing too that you wanna make sure is that you've got the appropriate, right, consents and disclaimers if you are collecting data through your app, right? If you are or are not providing medical advice, that's also something that you wanna be very cautious of and cognizant of when building your product.
Oh my gosh, that's great, great, great. Probably going to do a TikTok for that one to remind everybody. It's so important, founders. Now, you also, one of the great things you do to keep everybody on top of their game in the women's health care and femtech world, and I'm sure it's a nice little funnel as well to bring folks in, is this phenomenal podcast that you have, Legally Femtech. Let's talk about that for a minute. How did you come to launch this? How do you like being a podcast host? What's your vision and mission for the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. I love being a podcast host. It is something that's very new for me and just started in February of this year. So it took a leap and something I'm very glad that I have kicked off and started. And the goal of the podcast really is to provide actionable, practical insights to femtech founders. And a lot of the advice, let me say, right, even though it's within the femtech context, can be used by other founders who are developing health tech products, and even startup founders in other industries, to be honest, is really trying to push out that practical, legal, ethical, social advice that founders can kind of take, especially at the early stages, and use to help build and refine their products and companies. And the reason that I started the podcast was because, right, as I mentioned, kind of with my own experience, when I was first looking into femtech, I was realizing that nobody was talking about it. And now I realize that there's a lot of companies out there that need some practical, basic legal insights, social insights, branding insights, for instance. But right, you're a startup company. You don't have a ton of cash at those early stages. Yet some of the decisions that you make at your early stages can have long-term negative impacts on your business model going forward. And so, right, you might make a decision about a name or a trademark you're going to use only to find out that you didn't conduct a trademark search and now you're infringing on somebody else's trademark or patent. And so that's what you want to make sure that you've got just those practical insights at your fingertips, even if you can't afford an attorney or another type of expert content developer, et cetera. And so that's what the podcast is designed to do, is just really push out some of those insights to help founders at all stages whenever they're starting to build their businesses.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. That is so very important. And I just love that you're doing the podcast, and we can find you wherever we tune into podcasts, right? Spotify,
That's
Apple, etc. Oh, I know that's so valuable to so many founders. And this is what we love to see, by the way, here on the Startup Life Live show, during or after. Jerry's asking Jackie to email him. He's mentoring a female founder that connects cancer patients in treatment with providers that relieve pain and discomfort for treatment. So yay. And of course, cancer is very traumatic when that's a trauma on the body for sure. And then Mia, I love this comment. The best ideas start with what no one is talking about, right? From the Shit We Don't Talk About podcast host. Yes. Okay, great. Oh my gosh. So Bethany, your mission, everything you've got going on, your vision, the threads that you've pulled. I just love that you are in your lane, making things happen. Please share with us what success looks like for you today, and how are you measuring that success? Are you measuring it using Bethany's measuring tape or the law firm's measuring tape or someone's outside of ourselves measuring tape? And listeners and viewers, I always bring this up because sometimes we determine our success on what other people think, and we measure it by what other standards are, not our own. So I'm always saying, please be self-aware and use your own measuring tape. Take it away, Bethany.
Yeah, I would totally echo what you said, Andy. It's really hard a lot of times, right? Even though I'm not a founder, I know a lot of founders also experience this, right? to be making a lot of progress, right? Be making some great strides and still feel like you're not doing enough, or you haven't hit those metrics that you really wanted to hit yet, even though maybe you've only been doing it for 8 months, right? And it could take 3 years to get to where you want. So I would wholeheartedly say, don't get discouraged every single day. As long as you're doing one step, right? One tiny little thing forward, you're going to make the progress that you want to make. And that's what I've had to tell myself many times, is, don't get in a hurry. Every single building block you're putting in place will lead you to where you want to go. And it's hard to really define what success looks like. For me, I've had to pull away from having success be defined by external measures, like how many clients I get, right? How many I'm bringing in, how many people are liking, LinkedIn posts, etc. And I've moved instead to a measurement system where, do I feel good about what I'm doing? Do I feel like I'm putting thought leadership and actionable content out there to help others? If so, then I'm achieving my goal, because my ultimate end goal is really to help FemTech founders get their products to the market. And so anything that I take in furtherance of that step, I consider that a win, even if it's 3 LinkedIn posts a week that are pushing out some ethical or practical insights, and one FemTech founder is able to use that or find value in it. That to me is a success. And so that's what I've had to redefine success as, and really look back at what was that ultimate goal. Yeah, right. It would be great to have clients come in. It would be great to be able to help them in a legal capacity officially, but that's not the end game for me, right? The end game is really just trying to help as many FemTech founders as possible get their products out there.
Oh my gosh. FemTech founders, who wouldn't love to have Bethany on the team noodling with you, right? Come on. I mean, this brain, clearly from the whole conversation, this woman knows how to research and pull on threads, but also she brings her brilliant legal mind to the equation so she can make sure that no, don't go that way. That's going to not be good for you in the company. There's so many loopholes or openings where you might get harmed. Go this way, just a little tweak and you're there. Oh, Bethany, you're the gift that keeps on giving for founders. I love that. So as you have built your practice up and you've been teaching and podcasting and helping so many founders, how, when you have had those moments where you're feeling like, oh, geez, why bother, or inadequate as a leader, or, oh gosh, advice, I don't know. Folks, we all have our moments of doubt where everybody's in the charge every day perfectly. Bethany, what have you used to shift your state of mind?
Yeah, I will definitely say I've had those moments. I have had them somewhat frequently, especially when starting out and it seems a bit overwhelming. And even if you've had really, really good days, right, you're going to have a bad day. You're going to have a bad week or a bad month where things just don't go as planned, right? Maybe you didn't get as much content out as you wanted. Maybe people didn't find compelling or engaging the things that you thought that they were going to find compelling or engage with. And so what I typically do, right, is I have one person, right, who I can talk to and just say, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now. And it's a completely valid feeling, right? You don't want to add guilt on top of the feeling that you're not, being successful enough or doing enough. So I'll reach out to my mentor, who happens to be one of the partners at our law firm, who's been through this, right? And she kind of knows exactly what it takes to build up a business and to be out there helping founders. And so I'll reach out to her and I'll just say, hey, I'm feeling down. I'm feeling like I haven't accomplished what I want to accomplish. I'm here, but I want to get to X. How do I get there? What am I doing wrong? And typically, right, the answer that I get is, you're not doing anything wrong. It takes time, right? It's a roller coaster ride. It's not a straight shot up to success. There's a lot of dips and a lot of peaks on that journey. And so typically, right, that is helpful. And I will also sometimes just step away from it for a day or two and say, you know what, I need to recharge. I need to rest. And yeah, maybe I need to regroup and think about a different strategy. Okay, I didn't get that speaking engagement, right? Or I didn't get, this other news opportunity. All right, well, just step back. Some time and just focus on other things, come back refreshed, formulate a plan, see if there's things that you should be doing differently. And also just don't add the guilt on top of it. We all have days and moments where things are just not going to go our way. And so I think also recognizing that that's a normal part of the founder and startup journey is really helpful.
Oh, Beautiful, delicious words. Seriously, it's so important, everybody. Think about your self-talk. Would you ever talk to someone that way? I don't think so. So monitor that self-talk and then give yourself a high five in the mirror because you're doing it. You're getting up every day. And what I love about your taking a break, Bethany, it really helps us to become an observer on our business. It's a
Mhm.
personal journey. Of course, we're growing and thriving in ways we never could have in any other role. But at the same time, we have to be careful in what we tell ourselves. And, feeling guilty about the decisions, oh, that doesn't help anybody. Lighten
It
up.
doesn't. No, no, and the one thing that I always remind myself every time that I'm feeling down is that I have made so much progress from where I started, right? I I wasn't in this industry, a couple
Right.
years ago. Look where it is now. And so that's what I tell myself too, as I say, as long as I'm doing one thing, one small thing, whether it's, checking LinkedIn or writing a post for 5 minutes a day, as long as I'm just doing one thing to build my brand and my business every single day, I'm so far ahead of those who haven't started, right? Or who are sitting there,
That's
depressed
right.
or thinking about their ideas, right? Even though I might be having a bad day, I can still do one thing, and then 3 days later, I'm going to feel so grateful I did that.
That's right. That one thing. I think there's a book called that. But hey, Jackie, this is great. This is what we want, right? And this is why you get on podcasts or you get on live stream shows like the Startup Life live show. So, Jackie Johnson is asking, would love to have Bethany on the team. Do you have startup advisory services or packages for early stage startups?
Yeah, it's a great question. So sometimes we do mentorship for startups informally, and then once you get to the stage where you're ready to engage, we'll have a more formal agreement. In those types of services, we're not providing you with legal advice, but we're providing you with kind of general mentorship. So some members of our team do that. As I was mentioning before, the way that we find to work best with startup founders, right, is we also need to make sure that startup founders understand, right, that legal is an investment, and so, right, it's we found, right, that some of the early stage startup companies, who aren't ready or willing to invest in legal may have some problems down the line. And so we want to work with team members who are able to do that type of an investment and understand how important legal services will be to their team. And so for that reason, we don't offer special pricing for startup companies, since most of our companies are actually startups, but we do work on a fixed fee, basis, on that retainer basis, and we're able to flex that to your needs, right? So if you've got, maybe you're just starting out, and so you don't have a ton of legal needs right now, but you want some advice, you want somebody who knows your business, maybe you just want some strategy calls, right? We can build a retainer around that for you for a monthly retainer. And then as you grow, we sit down with you every quarter and we have a strategy session and we see, great, this is what we've achieved to date. This is where you wanted to be. Yes, you achieved that, right? No, you didn't. What does the next quarter look like? Where do you want to go? Okay, yeah, my funding has increased now. I want to do XYZ, right? And so we're able to kind of flex those retainer agreements through a lot of communication and a lot of strategy sessions together.
Oh my gosh. It's so important, everybody. Do not use LegalZoom, okay, for your business ever. I have too many horror stories. So please just trust me on this, but you can always reach out to me if you want to hear them. I should just do a video on the horror stories of not folks who don't use a good legal team, especially for your industry, like Bethany
Yeah.
has here.
That's so important, Andy. I just want to really
Yeah.
capitalize on that because we also have interacted with a lot of startup founders who have worked with other legal teams, but those legal teams may not be well versed in the healthcare industry. And if you're a healthcare, startup founder, you have to have somebody who knows healthcare law, right? It's not enough to have a general corporate lawyer, right? Or just a general kind of do it all lawyer. You need somebody who knows healthcare regulations because the way that healthcare is regulated today, it is very complex. And you could be setting yourself up for a structure that could lead to fraud and abuse allegations later on. So I know it's it's a complicated legal
Yes.
landscape, and you want to make sure that you've got somebody, if you're in healthcare, who is both a startup attorney and well versed in healthcare regulations.
Oh my gosh, so important, everybody. I can't stress that enough. That's why legal is the number one dream team member that you need to have. And Jennifer Jackie Johnson says, nice, a retainer around strategy. That is a great offering. Jackie knows. And yes, I saw that. I've got two, Richard O. How are you, Richard O? So good to see you. Startup. It's a roller coaster ride. Stitch that on a pillow for sure. But I also like this one for Stitch That on a Pillow, which is as long as I'm doing one thing to build my business every day, I'm doing something. That's really powerful. And let's just do a round of applause for Stitch That on a we like to celebrate here at the Startup Life Live
I
show.
love it.
Bethany, oh my gosh. So, I have one final question, which is what have you learned from working with founders that has helped your own journey, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really think the thing that I've learned from founders is what they need. Kind of being a lawyer, I originally came into this field with a lot of preconceived notions about what startup founders were going to need, right? They're all going to need this set of documents, right? They're all going to need this type of advice. And I thought that it was going to be a much more standard process, right? And that it was, almost like one startup is like a dime a dozen, right? That I think is the greatest lesson that I have learned over the course of my experience with founders is just how unique every single company is, every single business model. Even if you're doing something that somebody else is already doing, there's different ways to structure it, and how you're doing it could make it an entirely different business structure than what's out there. And so for me, being able to listen to the startup founders that I work with, not come in with any kind of preconceived notions of what they're going to need, but really sit down and listen to their pain points, especially if they've worked with other lawyers. There's usually a lot of pain points around like lack of communication with lawyers, and things like that. And then be able to, sit there and be curious with them, right? And especially during our kickoff calls that we have, it's a chance for us to just be curious and ask questions about your model. And it helps us really then issue spot what you actually need versus what we think you're going to need going into that conversation.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, brilliant. I love that. That's just such again, I keep bringing it up, but that is a team member, folks. That is somebody. And when you're raising capital, investors love to see that on your one pager. Who is your legal counsel for your business? It shows how you have stepped up as a founder to protect your business. Thank you so much, Bethany, for joining me for a delicious conversation. Any last words before I pop you in the green room and wrap things up?
No, just thank you so much for having me. And I hope that you all will tune in to Legally FemTech and reach out with any questions or if I can ever be of use. It has been great being on the show. And Ande, I love your enthusiasm and the enthusiasm of your audience. It is very contagious.
Thank you. I love that too. Thank you so much. I'm going to just pop myself in the full screen here. Oh, I got to tell you, when I hear legal conversations, not advice, remember the disclaimer, from someone like Bethany, it just really makes my heart sing with joy because I know she and her firm are about protecting you, the founders. And the landscape for health tech and women's femtech is very murky. You need a top drawer firm that knows what they're doing to help you. So I just love it. And who wouldn't want to work with Bethany? She's so delightful. Okay, so here's who's coming up next on the Startup Life Live show. I got to tell you, this founder had me at no more wadded sheets in my dryer. What? So Cindy we're chatting with inventor and entrepreneur Cindy Bray, and that's on our Fab Female Founder Friday, September 9th, 12 p.m. ET. And Cindy didn't expect she would become an entrepreneur when she bought a new washer dryer set. But that's what happened. Her new dryer claimed to have an excellent Energy Star rating, but she found that her bed sheets were constantly swirling into giant wads, increasing the amount of time she had to run the dryer and wasting energy in the process. And get this, with zero experience, Cindy took on the task of finding a solution by teaching herself physics, CAD drawings, creating prototypes, and eventually trademarking a product and bringing it to market in a 14-month turnaround. What? And the result is wad-free for bed sheets. I mean, she was on Shark Tank. She had the sharks all fighting in the water to get in on her deal. She has such a great story to tell, especially as a mom, but also as a woman who lost her partner, her husband, to cancer when all of this was going on. So, I mean, she's been through it all. We're going to have a great conversation with Cindy. And I don't know about you, but the new washer and dryers, it's like I'm not big enough to get my sheets out of a wad. So how do you know whenever we have a new guest on the show and what we're talking about? You join the Startup Life Live meetup group. Here's the QR code. Hop in, the show notes have the link. It's basically bit.ly/Startup Life Live. Live is all caps. Join that so that you can learn more about each guest that's coming on. And as Mia saying, whew, she needs a cigarette now after this great conversation today. And yes, we'd all need #WAD free with our sheets. Okay, everyone, until next time, I'm cheering you on. Reach out to me, connect with me, share your wonderful startup stories with me, because I love hearing what you're up to. And I really do believe that you've got what it takes to succeed. You've got this. And until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Mwah, everyone. Time to dance again.